you've given me an example of free... Sorry, Jane, you've given me an example of free speech being under threat. You can't tell me what the person said.
Well,
I've asked you for one single thing that you can't say in the UK without fear of being arrested, and you can't think of anything. It's because Britain still is a country, compared to the United States, by the way, where free speech absolutely exists and always will.
Well, we both see it differently then.
But you can't give me any single point of evidence whatsoever to back up your idea.
Give me...
A former advisor to Donald Trump came on British national radio to tell us that free speech is under threat here in the UK. She brought up an 82-year-old man being arrested as her big example. The only problem is she could not remember what he was actually arrested for. And when the host asked her to name just one single thing you cannot say in Britain without fear of being arrested, she could not think of anything. Not one thing. This is meant to be one of the sharp ones, a Trump advisor with a doctorate, and she came on LBC completely empty-handed. Stick around, because this one is something else. Now let's get into it.
It's funny that you think that he's taking a dig. Do you not think that when an 82-year-old man is arrested for posting something on Facebook, that is not a form of censorship?
Well, it depends what he posts, doesn't it? It depends if it's legal.
Well,
what did that 82-year-old man post?
Well, let's back up a minute here. If we are starting to scrutinize everything that someone says, if we're arresting them because
hold on a minute.
hate speech,
what is you mentioned a specific case there. What is it this 82-year-old was arrested for?
Honestly, I can't remember, but you're
telling me that it's outrageous that an 82-year-old man was... No, sorry, this is important because you've just said this is an example of free speech under threat in the UK, but you can't tell me what he was arrested for.
I don't remember the
So why are you bringing it up then?
I brought it up as an example that if we are scrutinizing what an 82-year-old man posts on Facebook...
But you can't assess that without knowing what he said, can you?
Well, you know what? Let's just say I brought up a wrong example because I don't have the context of it.
Could it possibly be because it's all a load of nonsense and free speech isn't under threat in the UK at all, which I think you've just demonstrated respectfully?
You know what? I've been there I've lived in the UK for 24 years. And yes, I do believe that censorship, it started with political correctness.
Right.
And as political correctness moved from accusing people of microaggressions and then people getting triggered over what somebody said, it has been a form of putting a speech straitjacket on people.
So what can't you say in the UK right now without being arrested that you think people should have the right to say?
You know what? That's a very good question.
It is. Thank you.
It is. I can't answer that question, and I can't give you an example exactly. But see,
so
what I find interesting.
Sorry, Jane. You've given me an example of free speech being under threat. You can't tell me what the person said.
Well,
I've asked you for one single thing that you can't say in the UK without fear of being arrested, and you can't think of anything. It's because Britain still is a country, compared to the United States, by the way, where free speech absolutely exists and always will.
Well, we both see it differently then.
But you can't give me any single point of evidence whatsoever to back up your idea.
Why don't you give me an example of how free speech still exists and censorship is not there?
Because you don't get arrested by the police for saying anything that isn't incitement or hate speech in this country. People are free to express their opinions. People are free to give their views. We do not have a police state in this country, unlike, I might say, the way that the United States is going under Donald Trump.
Well, you know, that's interesting because it's not going that way with Donald Trump. It was going that way, and it's now reversing itself.
Right. So banning journalists from the White House because you don't like what they've written, demanding the impeachment of judges because you don't like what they've ruled, sacking government officials because they've dared to criticise you at any point in recent years, defunding universities because they're not doing what you do, threatening law firms if they don't toe the party line, defunding media organisations that you think are against you, arresting students because of what they've written on social media, and ramping up checks of people entering the UK to check they haven't posted anything on Facebook that you don't like, doesn't amount to any sort of attack on free speech.
That's really twisting things without the specific
facts.
examples. You're giving...
They're facts.
No, you're giving examples the same way I gave the example
But you
of
didn't
the
give any examples,
82-year-old
and I've just
man.
given you 10.
No, you've just given me a very biased perspective.
Bias, it's facts. All of those things have happened. Which of those haven't happened? Have journalists been banned from the White House under the Trump administration?
Have journalists been banned, or have they brought in alternative media that presents a different
I'm not talking about
angle?
Have journalists from organisations like the Associated Press been banned by the White House, yes or no?
Yes, they have.
Right. Have judges been threatened with impeachment because the White House doesn't like their rulings? Yes or no?
Let's not do it that way. Let's go back to that. And yes. Why were they? Why were they banned?
But so we accept, right, are we accepting that all the things I just suggested have happened?
If you don't let me finish, then we can't really have a conversation here, because you've got a very biased perspective here. I'm not biased at all. Angle.
I'm giving you facts, and I'm just asking whether you recognise that those things are true.
No. You know what? It's so interesting. Did we not have a bunch of fake news here? And in the U.S., we did. And why? Why did we have fake news? Because it was biased and it was wrong. And so that is one of the reasons. You know, you're listing 10 things and cutting me off. But then why was the Associated Press no longer welcome? Because they gave fake news that has been proven.
But Jan, you coming on the national radio station here on LBC and saying an 82-year-old man being arrested is an attack on free speech without having a clue what he's actually said is not fake news at all.
It's not. It's not that I haven't had a clue. I can't remember the specifics.
Right.
But the fact that...
But how can you know it's an attack on free speech if you can't remember what he'd actually said?
Well, you know, it's very interesting because you... started this off by saying J.D. Vance had a dig. And so we don't get to have an intelligent discussion about whether there really is censorship going on, if people are afraid to speak out.
But he has had a dig, and that's his own language. He said previously when he talked about the UK...
No, you called it a dig.
Right, so let us talk about what actually happened there, because it is more embarrassing than it first appears. Jan Halper Hayes did not just lose an argument. She walked into a national radio studio with no evidence, no examples, and no preparation, and tried to lecture a British audience about censorship in their own country. That takes a particular kind of confidence that has absolutely nothing to do with intelligence. She mentioned an 82-year-old man being arrested as proof that free speech is dying in the UK. When the host asked what he actually posted, she said, and I quote, "I cannot remember." So she brought up a case she cannot remember to prove a point she cannot evidence to an audience she clearly knows nothing about. That is not political commentary. That is just vibes with a doctorate attached to it. And here's what really stings about this. The host did not even have to work hard. He just asked basic questions. What did the man post? Name one thing you cannot say in Britain without being arrested. That is it. 2 questions. And she had nothing. Because the truth is the free speech crisis she came here to warn us about does not exist in the UK the way she was claiming. People are free to express opinions, criticize the government, protest in the streets, and say things that make others deeply uncomfortable. That is all legal here. What is not legal is incitement and hate speech, which is true in virtually every functioning democracy on the planet, including the United States, where, by the way, you also cannot walk into a courthouse and threaten a judge without consequences. Now, the host then turned it around and listed 10 specific ways the Trump administration has actually attacked free speech in America. Banning Associated Press journalists from the White House, threatening judges with impeachment for rulings they did not like, defunding universities over campus speech policies, pressuring law firms into compliance, restricting words like gender and LGBT from federal communications, cracking down on student protesters. Every single one of those things happened and is on the public record. And Jan Halper Hayes sat there and called it biased. She did not deny any of it. She just said it was biased. Because when you cannot argue the facts, you attack the framing and hope nobody notices. This is what we are dealing with when it comes to Trump defenders. They come over here, they try to tell us our house is on fire while their own house is genuinely burning down. And when you hand them a mirror, they call it a trick. Jan Halper Hayes has apparently done this twice now and fallen apart both times. At some point, you have to ask who keeps inviting her back and why she keeps saying yes when she clearly has not done the homework. This is Fool's Ballot, and this is exactly the kind of nonsense we are here to call out every single time. If this gave you something to think about, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to see it. I will see you in the next one.